Welcome to the Maria Sanchez Show. We are live. It's Wednesday, November 24th, the day before Thanksgiving. Thank you so much for making us a part of your time. If you don't get a chance to watch the segments in their entirety or when we're live Monday through Friday at 4 o'clock, please go to the website under archives, and any program that we've done since August is there and is able for you to view at your leisure. Now you're a Conejo Valley resident, correct?
That's right.
Yeah, Conejo Valley resident Howard J. Fox in studio with us, who just braved the traffic. He's going to be speaking with us. I did my due diligence with the reading. The Truth About Men, Revealing the Mysteries of the Men's Weekends. And before we get into the specific of your book, why don't you give us a background about, obviously you're a man.
I'm a man. I'm 56. My profession is lawyer. Turns out that my sideline was getting involved in the men's movement back in 1995, which led to this book.
And what was the men's movement? What did that mean? Was that a response to the feminist movement, or was it because of the fire in the belly, or?
I'd be tempted to do that because I'm always interested in things historically, but as I knew it, there were a number of organizations offering men's weekends, sort of like initiation rites for men. And usually after these weekends, men were so excited about it, they would want to continue, so they'd meet on week after week after week, once a week, and those became known as men's teams or men's groups. And the organizations began sponsoring those as a part of their weekends.
Now, these organizations that host the men's weekends and then the subsequent follow-ups, are they for-profit, or what is their orientation?
Some are non-profit, some are for-profit.
And they do it because there's a need, obviously, but if they're non-profit, I would seem to think that that's more altruistic, and the for-profit is because it's a profession?
I would say that the for-profits I've seen, the person running it puts so much time into it, he's got to earn a living.
Mm-hmm. I see. So it can't just be an avocation. It's.
I don't think anybody gets into this business solely to make money.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be a desire.
Now, I have a little bit of experience, and give you that much, with a men's movement. And one of my brothers, I have two brothers, he was living in Berkeley at the time. He got married. It was fated from the beginning. Everyone knew it, and it just went bad fast. So he joined a men's group in Berkeley where they did the drum beat and stuff like that, but they also did sharing. And he said a couple statements that he made were like, when your wife won't have sex with you for 4 months, and they were like, no. And so things that he knew as normal, he was actually having a way to vet them out with these other men, and they were saying no. And if he hadn't been in that men's support group, if you will, I think he might have suffered along thinking, well, that's the way marriage is, or that's the way women are, or whatever. So that was my one glimpse into that, and that was in the 90s.
Yeah, and that brings up the two-sided coin. On the one hand, it's very relieving to be in a large group of men, to feel safe enough to say, this is what's going on for me, and to find out I'm not alone. This is a common problem for men. And on the other side of the coin, it's another thing to find out that I've been putting up with something for a long time that other men don't put up with.
But better late than never, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about your personal journey into why?
Well, I must have been about 40 years old, and I had done all the things I was supposed to do, created a family, ran a profession, and I still felt like there's something more. Where's the big bang? And then my oldest friend in the world, and I don't mean old, but I mean from childhood, from way back, he said, Fox, I've just done this men's weekend, and I think you ought to do it too. So I went to a men's weekend with his cousin, who was also an old friend of mine, and that was like a step on a new life, a journey into a whole new world.
And what was the most dramatic difference for you? And was it a day-to-day difference, or was it about, because I know in your book you mentioned that men are not known for sharing their feelings, that you're the provider, you're the strong one, you're the patriarch, and that the weekends allow you to tap into your emotions and to your feelings. Was that the experience for you?
It's almost everything you said. Knowing that I'm the strong one, men don't always feel that, even though we try to show it. And we get the strength from each other. It is day to day. It's how we live day to day. And all those other things you said, which I don't remember right now. But the not being alone, the able to share with other men is such a huge relief, because in the world we just say, hello, how are you? I'm fine. Did you watch the game? I watched the game. And we're competitors. We're constantly competitors. We're competitors at work. We're competitors for resources. We think we're competitors for women. And it's a whole new world to find out that we don't have to be. We can actually help and support each other.
Without it being a sign of weakness or an expression of showing that you're vulnerable or being labeled a wuss or whatever, right? In other words, you're given permission to be a human being instead of being some automatron.
Permission to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, do you want to share a little bit about some of the misconceptions that men? I'm wondering which came first. Like, I know men. My mother always jokes, men are hunters and gatherers, and women are tenders and befrienders, right? So, that's in general. We're made that way, but obviously that doesn't put into account the human experience, which is that we're also emotional and we're also fragile and we're also, sentimental, and we love and we have feelings.
Well, we're definitely the ones that are driven by the testosterone and the upper body strength, which may be the only advantage we have.
In terms of strength.
That's right.
Yeah. And so somebody who doesn't know what, like, do you have to feel that there's something wrong or missing? Like you said, where's the Big Bang? Or is this?
No, not at all. It's another step upwards. It wasn't so much something was missing, but it was, what is the next step in my life? And the next step is something that other societies did early in life. When boys became men, they became part of the circle of men. We don't have that. So with the men's organizations, thank God they're there, we tend to get into it very late.
You're speaking about men collaborating.
Exactly.
Right. In terms of, one of the points you mentioned in the book too, is that men used to learn how to become a man because of the modeling that they were privileged to have, i.e. fathers, extended family, that sort of thing. And now that, was it 40% of households don't even have a man in the household?
40% of all households are single parent driven. But what you were saying is right, and that comes out early in the book, which is that boys used to go to the fields and work with their fathers, their uncles, their grandparents, all the other men in the village. They used to go on the hunt with all the men. They learned to become men simply by being with men and being taught or corrected by men. And now our dads seem to be somewhere else. They take a long drive somewhere and we don't see them. Mm-hmm. And even in school, our teachers are primarily women. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that we don't have male examples.
And we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to focus in on that single parent household dilemma, since 40%, that's a lot that goes on. And as the mother of 3 sons, and I was single mother for most of their life, that was a concern of mine too. You're watching the Maria Sanchez Show. We have author and attorney Howard J. Fox in studio with us. The Truth About Men, revealing the mysteries of the men's weekends. We'll be right back. The Maria Sanchez Show is about the county, by the county, and for the county. Whether we're broadcasting live from the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, checking in with the leaders in our communities, hearing from our elected officials, helping to promote public safety,
preparedness, and wellness. We are here for the needs of Ventura County. The Maria Sanchez Show is also about entertainment and events. Sharing information, creating awareness, and supporting those in need. Won't you join us as we rewrite the rules of local television on the Maria Sanchez Show at www.kadytv.com.
Welcome back to the Maria Sanchez Show. We are so grateful that you're with us this afternoon. We're live. It's Wednesday, November 24th. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, a day for us all to stop and reflect about what we have to be grateful for, even in these tough economics times. And I can say to you that one of the things that I'm grateful for is this opportunity to bring the county to the county, and it's a privilege to be here. And if you have anything that you'd like us to know about, please do so on the website. Contact us. Monday, we will be broadcasting live from the Ronald Reagan Library when Mike Huckabee is in town for an hour on a book signing blitz. And we also have Monday Bob Worthley from Crime Stoppers, who visits with us every Monday to talk about the most wanted in the county. But now we're continuing our conversation with attorney and author Howard J. Fox, who wrote The Truth About Men. And I have to tell you something, Howard. I was raised by, both of my parents speak English as their second language, so there's a lot of immigrant mentality that I was raised with. My mother is the ninth of 10 children. She had 7 brothers. And so she always extolled the virtues of men. You have to keep in mind what it's like for them to go across that dance floor and ask a girl to dance. If you're at a dance, you owe them at least one dance. You don't have to say yes to a second dance, but so she brought us up, I'm the eldest of 4, with a lot of empathy for what it was to be a man because of her 7 brothers. So I felt like I kind of had an inside scoop, if you will, a little bit, instead of it's all about, they're cocky and they're this and they're that. No, they're human beings that, that they feel rejected too. They've got self-esteem issues too, that sort of thing. So the truth about men is what?
The truth.
According to Howard J. Fox.
Well, this may sound like a cliche, but the truth is we are men, and we cannot be changed. We can't be made softer. We can't be made feminine. We are men. And it's very difficult for boys when they go to school and they have to deal with rules that just goes against their nature. Now, I'm not saying the rules are wrong, but there also has to be an understanding that it's very difficult for boys to sit in their chairs and not get into trouble.
Mm-hmm. And that would be a testosterone thing, probably?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I have one son who has always danced to his own beat, and he entertains himself by himself and always has. And the ADD word was always hanging in the room, but they would never mention it. And finally the school said to me, he was at a Catholic school, and they said, if you don't get him diagnosed, he can't stay here anymore. He's not a distraction to others, he's a distraction to himself. And so we did, and the thing came out. Public school, private school, Catholic school has very little tolerance for things. You got 50 in a classroom. You can't have people squirreling around in their chairs. But he's now 21 years old, and there's no issues. But I refuse to medicate him.
Yes, it bothers me that most of the children who were diagnosed with ADD are boys, because it tells me that there's simply disapproval of boys' behavior. And maybe it's the school that needs to change to adapt to the boys' behavior.
Mm-hmm. There's a thought, huh?
Yes.
Let's accept people as they are and adjust accordingly. Now tell me, if a man doesn't have the opportunity, like you were exposed to a weekend because of your best buddy, if somebody doesn't know about that, and obviously your book is helping to get that information out, and you're being on the program as well, how could somebody stumble upon it or discover that there's something missing and that this might be one of the answers for them?
Well, what I've tried to do with the book is provide a handbook for men. There are men who don't know about men's weekends. There are men who simply don't want to go to a men's weekend, or maybe can't afford one, or aren't near one. But by reading the book and then developing a team of trusted men, they can do the work themselves.
Now, can you give us a synopsis of what a men's weekend is?
It's so many things. And at the same time, I don't want to reveal anything that happens there, because then when a man goes, it's not going to have the same impact
Right.
as when it's completely new and novel.
But should somebody be prepared to, I mean, you go in with what kind of a mindset? To check judgment at the door, leave your relationships behind, open your heart? I mean, what baggage do they take?
Well, open your heart sounds good, but I would go with no expectations. Open your heart. Don't cast any judgments. Treat it as if it's a movie, because when we go to a theater, we fall into this belief that we're actually watching real people and a story, when all we're watching are lights on a wall and sounds coming out of a speaker. And you have to go in with the same idea to a men's weekend. I'm going to suspend my judgments. I'll see what happens, and I'll take what I like.
And how touchy-feely is it? Like, are you sitting on the floor cross-legged kumbaya-ing?
I have never sung Kumbaya.
Because, I mean, somebody might be thinking, that's hippy-dippy, or, I mean, what?
I've never seen a hippy-dippy one. No, they're raw and they're powerful.
And I understand you not wanting to share more, because I've gone on weekends for spiritual reasons, and that would have been a bummer if I knew what to expect, because that element of surprise, because it unfolds as it's meant to be, and as you're ready for it, and you can't push that or rush that. And so I appreciate that. And tell me how if your men's weekend experience affected your relationships when you came back.
I could talk to my friends that I had for, by that time, maybe 30 years. I discovered we really weren't talking about much, and we weren't sharing anything with each other. And suddenly we're talking about important things with each other. Yes, I really felt bad about something. I felt really good about something. I was depressed. I'm not, any issue that comes up at all, we were able to talk about.
But Howard, you had the tools that were given or shared with you. Your friends didn't necessarily, and you changed. Now, I know that change creates change.
It does.
But how uncomfortable was that initially for everybody?
Well, I was initially thinking about the friends who invited me to the weekend, the men who went with me.
Who had been on the experience.
We had a whole new experience with each other. And to put it in another way, we were in a position where we could really kick each other's butts when it was necessary. So, for example, if I call up one of my friends and say, I'm not feeling so good and this happened, and somebody said something to me, he'll say, Howard, you're just whining. Get out of it. With other men, it goes slower, with men who haven't done a men's weekend. But they pick up the trust that I'm offering them, and they react to it positively.
But I would still think that they might think, geez, why is he saying something like that? He's never revealed his feelings before. I'm uncomfortable. That's a lot of expectation. Because feelings do have some weight to them.
Somebody has to be first.
Mm-hmm.
And the man who is first is appreciated by the other men.
Now, how did it affect your relations with your wife and your children?
That is a whole nother story. At that time, I had a marriage which was beyond repair. So in that sense, I was able to come to the realization that that is what was happening. That it wasn't about me doing things wrong. It was about a relationship that wasn't working anymore. As far as my children, it changed dramatically. Instead of being my children's friend, I was their father, which means I wasn't worried about whether they liked me. I was worried about raising them.
Mm-hmm. You're saying that your weekend experience caused that paradigm shift in you.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the best example is when my boys would act up, I'd say, give me 20, which means hit the floor, give me 20 push-ups. And they would do it, and they would come up in a whole different mode because of the oxygen rushing to their brain, and they'd be happy whatever was going on before it was over. And they would say, we like doing the push-ups a whole lot better than the lectures that we used to hear.
But a lecture sounds like not somebody trying to be a friend. A lecture sounds like somebody trying to be a father.
But a lecture is often a waste of time, especially with boys. Boys simply need a physical activity.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to speak and have you address the issue of the single-parent households, because if somebody is watching and they're in that situation, be they male or female, mother or father, how they can help that experience with an absent
Right.
parent in that regard. You're watching the Maria Sanchez Show. We're visiting with attorney and author Howard J. Fox, who has written the book, The Truth About Men. We'll be right back.
Maria's talking, so call Maria, her show is killer.
Welcome back to the Maria Sanchez Show. We're live. It's Wednesday, November 24th, the day before Thanksgiving. We thank you for your time. And we thank our in-studio guest, Howard J. Fox, who is the attorney/author of The Truth About Men, Revealing the Mysteries of the Men's Weekends. And a question that David just asked you, Howard, off camera, is one worth repeating, bears repeating. If the prototype or the role modeling was something along Promise Keepers, or what did you say, Jeff?
Promise Keepers.
But you said
Champions of Honor.
Champions of Honor, which I'm not familiar with.
Yes, I don't know Champions of Honor. I've read a little bit about Promise Keepers. The difference is Promise Keepers is faith-based with a specific faith. And there's nothing wrong with that, except the only men who can join are men who will be part of that faith.
Right.
The organizations that I've been involved with are not concerned with what your faith is. All faiths are welcome.
Or lack thereof,
Or
as the
that's
case
right.
may be. Two of my sons, I'm Roman Catholic, and I raised my four to be Catholic. They received all their sacraments, and two of them now declare themselves as apathetic agnostics. They don't have an axe to grind, but they don't believe in a higher power. It's like, okay. I'm hoping that's going to be a phase. But before we go into the single-parent households, I wanted to touch briefly back on what you were answering before we finished the prior segment. You mentioned the marriage that you were in when you attended your weekend. You came back and you had the clarity that it was not what you were doing wrong. It was the relationship wasn't working.
Right.
And then you also then talked about how it changed your paradigm of what a father is.
Yes.
And that creates, as I mentioned before, change creates change. So how else did it manifest itself?
Well, it manifested itself in my next marriage, which is completely different. It's a much, much better experience because at that time, I'd already been involved in the men's work for several years. I had a better idea of who I was and how I could offer myself into the next relationship, and most important, how to pick the right mate.
And how did you do that?
I developed a very clear idea of what I wanted. And it was somebody who would be very, very, very happy. And, you know, there's a saying, if you simply tell the universe what you want, the universe will deliver.
Mm-hmm.
The universe delivered.
Did you have an idea of what it would look like other than that she was ordinarily a happy person? Like, did you say how much X amount of time you needed to be with one another, how much alone time you needed to have, what kind of profession would work best with you? Were you that specific, or you just were?
That's too much thinking for me.
Because women were told, if you don't have your list, how are you going to get who it is that you're looking for? In fact, I just had this conversation this afternoon with a woman. She was like, my affirmation is kind, loving, sensitive, other-centered, and successful. That's what I look for in a man. And that not about any of those other, you know, some people talk about socioeconomic and education and hobbies and etc. So I do have to say this about men. I love, and please don't take this as an insult because I mean it as a very much of a compliment, the simplicity of your thinking. Having raised 3 boys and then I have a daughter too. I have such a keen appreciation of what you put up with us women. Because with my boys, it was all physical, and then they
Yes.
pass out at night, exhausted. And with my daughter, it was all this drama, and I was like, please, it's not that difficult, I mean,
Yes, well, when we're in the circle of men and one man gets wound up and starts talking too much, another man will say, keep it simple, stupid.
Ah,
And we like to remind ourselves that we're stupid, although we're not really stupid, but we
Right.
try to remind ourselves of who we are.
mhm,
We're not that complicated.
mhm. That's exactly what I was going to say, but I thought you might take offense at that. And I love it. I just think it's so refreshing, and
Yeah.
you know what you're going to get. It's a black and white situation. It's you know what the buttons are, and so you avoid those.
And I think that's what you like about us.
I do, frankly,
Yeah.
I do. I love men. I always have.
I think women are happier with men who are simpler.
Probably. Tell me now about the single parent households and what that means to you and the men's weekends and.
It's an interesting society we live in where stars can get on television and be applauded for their terrific efforts in running a single parent family.
Mhm.
We've changed. I don't think that's good for the children. I don't think most people believe it's good for the children because they're lacking one role model.
Now, you could say, is it better to have a family being raised in a hostile environment where the parents
No.
aren't getting along and they're staying together just for the sake of the children?
If it's having a severe negative impact on the children, then they should get divorced.
And then the remedy is exposure as much as possible to both parents.
Yes, and get along with each other.
Mhm.
And the parents have to realize it's not about them, it's about the children.
Right. And now, that was one of my things being a single mom. My children were 2, 4, 6, and 8 when their dad and I divorced. And I was concerned about my sons having strong male role models. I'm fortunate that I have my brothers and my father around, but not in the same area. They've always lived 2 or 3 hours away. And their dad was around, but he chose to see them like once a month. So I don't know how you replace that. Like I always used to say, I was a mother and a father, but I can never be a man, so I can't really be a father. So I don't know what is the answer in that regard.
Well-
You've identified surrogates, or a community becomes a village, and
Yeah, I don't put up with a man who doesn't spend significant amounts of time with his children and act like a father. I also don't put up with a man who is continually putting down his ex-wife because that is harming his children.
but what is one to do about that if that's the reality?
Well, that's reality. If he's in my circle of men, he's going to hear about it.
Interesting. Do you think that they would share that?
We would know it,
Really?
yes.
Because my ex used to always talk about how much he loved his children, and I would say, yeah, 48 hours a month, I mean,
Well, all right, without talking about him because I don't know him,
you're right.
if I heard something like that in the circle of men, we would say, well, your feelings are very nice. What do you do? We don't want to hear what you're talking. We want to know your walk. What are you actually doing?
And so I'm getting, you haven't said it, but now you're intimating it, that you're holding each other accountable.
Exactly. We have to get to know each other. We have to know who is the man you want to be, who is the man I want to be, and hold each other accountable to those visions.
Which is kind of keep putting people's feet to the fire, right? Basically, I mean, not that it's harmful, but it's like you need to walk the walk and talk the talk.
All right, so if a man is having difficulty seeing his children, we'll say, how many times are you going to see your children next week? How many hours? And at the next meeting, we'll say, did you keep your commitment?
Wow. That's heavy.
Yes.
And I would think that if somebody wasn't committed to the program, they wouldn't want to be there because who wants to put up with that abuse, if you will?
It's not abuse.
I
because
know,
we've already become a trusted circle of men. They are there because something attracted them, and they know they need to change.
I would suggest, though, that you also are attracting a more enlightened and evolved human, too. So at least you're dealing with somebody who wants to make a difference.
Yeah, I suppose if you looked at some of the circles of men I've been in, you would wonder
Really?
if that's true, because we look Well, we look pretty gnarly in the beginning, but yes, we are there because we want something more.
So tell our viewers, aside from purchasing your book, where can they get other resources for groups and or weekends?
As far as I know, this is the only book that has tried to put a collection of all of the wisdom in one book, in one source. It may be because men don't like to read these kinds of books. There aren't that many resources out there, but if you do a search with keywords, you will come up with various websites, especially if you put in Men's Weekend.
Okay. And can you give a rough guesstimate about what it might cost for somebody to go attend one?
Well, I know the price came down a lot. I think some of them are back down to $500, which is what I paid back in 1995.
Okay. And that's a weekend with lodging and food and resources. Right. Okay. Well, Howard, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Howard J. Fox, the author of The Truth About Men, Revealing the Mysteries of the Men's Weekends. And we hope you have a very happy Thanksgiving. We are off Thursday and Friday for the program. We'll be back live Monday at noon at the Reagan Library with Mike Huckabee, and then again at 4 o'clock with our regularly scheduled program. You're watching the Maria Sanchez Show right here on KADYTV.com.